Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm podcast. You can kind of tell that we're in a different location. We're actually in a sugar shack, and I've got Cody Rockefeller here with me from Backwood Sugar Shack, and we're going to go into more detail about the process of making maple syrup, and we're going to get in and know a little bit more about Cody before we're done. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode. I'm Dwayne. I'm your host and producer. You can follow Discover Montcalm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as following us on discovermontcalmpodcast.com. You can go there, you can check out all of our episodes, you can grab the RSS feed and put it right into your favorite podcast app, browser, whatever you've got, and you can catch up on everything about Montcalm County. So Cody, thank you for letting me come into your sugar shack. Let me start real quick. A little history on the making of maple syrup. Where did the term sugar shack first come from? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so a lot of guys would have, large parcels of land out east and even in Michigan. And what they would do is they would just have giant shacks that they would just makeshift out in the middle of the woods. And they would have giant flat pans or big pots that they would just boil their sap in right out in the woods, just with a little shack to cover them up to hide them from the weather.
Okay. Let's get to know you just a little bit. You're originally from Montcalm County.
Yep, originally from Montcalm.
Matter of fact, the location that we're sitting in right now is the property that you grew up on.
Yep.
And tell me a little bit about your history. Where did you start school? Where did you graduate? Just walk me through the early childhood of Cody.
Well, first when I started school, I went to Lakeview until I was in 6th grade. And then my parents made the decision to move us to Central Montcalm. And then that's where I graduated from in 2016. And I played football when I was just a little kid and baseball. And then as I got older, I just stuck to track and basketball.
Okay. And the reason we're not standing next to each other, because I look really short next to Cody. and now the two chairs that he brought out, now I'm sitting above him, which is probably the only time people look down at him. But that's okay. We're here to have a little bit of fun. You told me before we got started a little history on how your family started doing maple. Yep. And you said you were 8 years old. Can you kind of give us that little history?
Yeah, so I was 8 years old, and I pestered my dad to take me on the job site with him that day. It was on a weekend, and I was just out slapping sticks against trees and stuff, typical 8-year-old, and then I saw a bunch of what I thought was smoke coming from a building. So I went to go check it out, and it was one of our local sugar producers that was an Amish guy making it, and he gave me a little cup full of maple syrup, and I was hooked immediately. And then he taught me all about it, and I got to ride on the wagon with him to go out and help him collect sap. And throughout the course of the day, I kept telling him about how many maple trees that my dad has at his house. And I finally convinced the Amish guys to throw a tank in the back of my dad's pickup with a bunch of old spiles and some buckets. And for the rest of that season, me and my dad brought them sap, and they traded us half the syrup for it.
So you were becoming a little salesman at 8 years old. And about what year was that?
Oh, that would have been 2008, I believe.
Okay. Or
2006, sorry.
Okay. Your dad, you started this. What was the premise when you first started? How many, do you remember back then, like how many gallons were you doing? Were you doing it at local flea markets? Once you start the process, you got to, unless, growing boy here, you ate that much pancakes and that much syrup, what was the early part of the business, and where did you sell the maple syrup?
So when we first started, we were fairly small. We only had a 2x8 evaporator, and we did about 350 trees a year. We tapped the trees right here around the house and on one of the neighbors' property. And we would average about 100 gallons a year, give or take a little bit. And we would just sell it to local people right around here. We never went to shows. We didn't sell it in any stores or anything. We would just have people show up and buy it, and it was a good gift giver.
Sure.
You know, we had a lot to give to the farmers that would let us hunt. My dad would give a lot to the farmers that he did projects with, that hired him to do jobs.
Mm-hmm. So, starting local.
Yeah, started local.
At what point did this start to turn into more, and I'll use the air quotes, a business?
In 2016, when I graduated, I made the decision to go big. And then the spring of 2017 is when I had all of my new equipment. And that's when I got this new boiler, the 4x12, and I bought a bunch of tubing and put it up. And I think we had 11 or 12,000 trees tapped the first year I decided to go big.
Wow. And what does that equate to gallons of sap compared to gallons of maple syrup?
Well, the sugar content in my area is awful. I only average about 1 gallon or 1% sugar, so it takes me 84 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup. So I can't, back so long ago, I can't remember how much syrup I made that year, but it's right around 1,000 gallons of syrup I made that first spring.
Okay. And I've always been amazed at how much sap equals how much syrup.
Yeah.
That your sap is way up here and what you get is down here.
Yeah.
So how many trees are you doing now? And we're in, March of 2024. About how many trees are you tapping now?
I only do 1,000 trees right now because I lost 2 woods last year, and I had hip surgery last December, so I wasn't able to put out my 2,500 to 3,000 bags that I usually do. So it hurt this spring not being able to do it, but next year we'll get back up and get at it.
Okay. You were telling me a little bit about, you graduated, and at that time, was it full-time for you almost immediately, or when did that happen?
Well, so when I first graduated, I got lucky and got a job with the union, through the laborers union, and fresh out of high school, I thought I was in paradise, man. Okay. I was making good money, and then it worked perfect because in the wintertime and spring, you don't do bridge work. So I got to do this, and then eventually I just started to work for my dad after I got sick of being gone from home all the time on the road, and now I just help another local beekeeper part-time.
Okay. And you were saying that you also do bees.
Yes, I do.
So we're going to go from honey to syrup, both naturally made. How much honey are you doing?
Last year I averaged just under 140 pounds of honey per hive, and I think I pulled honey off of 77 hives last fall.
Okay. So this is quite a production outfit that you have.
Yeah.
What kind of distribution are you doing now? You said when you started, you were, there were great gifts, you were handing it out, but there's a point when it becomes a business that it's all about, okay, I gotta eat, I got car payments, I've got health insurance and all of that. What's your distribution right now?
So a lot of times the stores will just call us and they'll just make orders, and then I just load it up in my pickup and just haul it right down to them.
Okay.
We've got several local stores, the Six Lakes Hardware, the Stanton Hardware, Herman Boy in Rockford. There's a couple farmers markets down by Detroit that get our maple syrup and honey that sell it, and I just find a good meet point and I just meet them halfway and give it to them. And
you were saying that you also care for your bees down in Georgia.
Yes.
And you've got some distribution down there because, while you're there, you can bring honey and you can bring syrup down with you.
Yep.
Are you finding that the places that you can get the syrup, they're also taking your honey?
Yes, most of the places that are buying my maple syrup, except for some of the farmers markets, because a lot of them already have a local beekeeper.
Okay.
But not a lot of people in the state of Michigan infuse their maple syrup like I do. We have 9 flavors currently.
Oh, really?
And I only know of a couple other people in the state of Michigan that have that. And when we go around to all these different craft shows, it makes it a lot easier to get my name out there and to push my product because it's something that the people have never had.
So I'm talking with Cody from Backwood Sugar Shack. You've got a Six Lakes address, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in Montcalm County, in the backwoods. I mean, kind of like coming to my place. You're a half mile down a dirt road. You got pavement on one side, but that's kind of where we're at. How did you come up with the name?
So the name, when I was younger, well, it was just as a joke because it was right next to the house. We called it the Way Out Back Sugar Shack.
Okay.
And once I got bigger, I wanted a new name for it, and we just kind of threw names out there and feelers, and that's just the one that stuck with everybody that liked the most.
So I'm assuming that Backwoods Sugar Shack. Do you have a .com? How do they find you on the web?
Yeah. So our website is backwoodssugarshack.com.
Okay, and you're also taking orders
Yes.
off from that website. So it's not only information about who you are, they can also place an order. So if you're out there listening and you're looking for some maple syrup, definitely check them out. You mentioned some of the local places that you're selling direct to. What is your biggest challenge to running this business?
The biggest challenge would probably be how young I am. So a lot of times, I'm only 25 years old, and when I first started this, trying to find people to sign lease agreements for me to go in their woods and put tubing up, or just to find people to let me put bees out on their property, they don't take me very seriously because of how young I am. And that was the same with a lot of the stores and restaurants that I was trying to go to. He's only 18, or he's only 19 years old.
Right. How quickly, in your mind, did that change? Obviously you got to win them over.
Yeah.
Service is what usually does that. How long did it take you to kind of build that up where you could build that trust?
Not very long, once they realized that this just wasn't something that, a high schooler just decided he was just going to do and then quit a couple years down the road. We've been in business now for a long time, and we just continuously expand our clientele, and I think we've got a lot of respect in the community and the syrup industry. Mm-hmm. I've never had an unhappy customer. We always take care of our customers if they call with something wrong.
Okay. You mentioned that you have flavors.
Yes, sir.
What are those flavors for everybody listening? They can go to your website.
Yep.
And I'll have that on the screen the whole time. So if any of you are starting to get like, I'm getting I got this little craving for some maple syrup. What are your flavors currently?
So currently I have cinnamon vanilla, rum, bourbon, cherry, salted caramel, coffee, blueberry, lavender vanilla, apple cinnamon. Let me think here if I forgot any.
Well,
I think that's all of them.
When did you go, I'm going to start putting flavors with this?
Right after we first started, because we were going to the shows and we weren't moving a whole lot of maple syrup or honey. We did okay, but then I started to think, everybody's had the plain Jane Michigan maple syrup, and it's good, but I said, let's start to throw a little bit of something extra in it. So the first flavor that I came up with was cinnamon vanilla. I said that would probably taste just like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and sure enough, it did. It tasted just like Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
So I look at this, and you've got different wines, and you've got different beers, and they're coming up with some pretty wild flavors. When you develop these, you start off with an idea. How long does it take you to kind of get it where, because people want consistency, I would think.
Yes.
If it's got something in it, they want to make sure they can taste it. How long did it take you to develop that first flavor?
It took a little bit of time. The biggest issue was the different grades of maple syrup. You have to add different levels of vanilla with it. Because the darker the maple syrup, the more potent the maple flavor is.
Okay.
And then the lighter the syrup, you have more of a sweetness to it. So it really determines and we have it all figured out now between the different grades of how much you have to add. And now, that way we have it very consistent now.
Okay. I was just looking you up on the web here, kind of, going down through here. I noticed that now you're doing it into bags. Did you start off in
Yeah, we started off in buckets the first couple years that we did it, and then I think it was the very next year after that we had done it with the Amish, my dad decided, you know what? Let's just build a sugar house and go get a cooker.
Sure,
So we drove all the way out to Wisconsin one day, me, my dad, and my mom, and we went and picked up a beautiful, it was brand new, never used, 2x8 evaporator. I think it had the Revolution pans on it with just a standard wood fire arch with a blower on it, and the dude sold it to us way cheaper than he should have. We got very lucky.
But you don't show that. You'll go,
No.
oh, let me pay you more.
Yeah.
We don't do that. But that kind of got you started.
Yep.
And I noticed here, when I look out your window, you've got some stainless tanks out there.
Yep.
You've got tubing coming into here. Once you're making the syrup, and you talked very quickly at the beginning that the sugar content is different here than what it's in other areas.
Yes.
Which, okay, that sounds really good, but I'm not going to start to say that I have any idea what that means. Does it mean that in order to get the sugar where you need it, you need more gallons of it?
Yes. And some years my sugar content's been as low as 0.5% or 0.75%. And that was the first year that I went big, of course, just bad luck. My sugar content dropped down to 0.5%.
I would think that, rain, moisture, the trees, that kind of stuff, is that what kind of determines how much sugar content you're going to get out of a tree?
So I've noticed that the summers and the falls that have good steady rainfall where the trees don't have to struggle, they always have a better sugar content in the spring.
Okay.
I have noticed that. On summers that are really dry, we usually struggle to get a high sugar content.
I've seen syrup light. I've seen it darker. I've seen honey light. I've seen honey darker. What determines, is it the time of year that it's done? What determines the color, or is it your location,
Location is some of it, but the majority of it comes down to a few factors. Number one being clean, clean, clean. Every time that I boil, my evaporator gets drained and cleaned. Every time that I pull sap out of a tank in the woods, I crawl inside of it and wash it out.
Okay.
And all the tanks here at the house get cleaned after every single run. Because I'm a firm believer that the cleaner it is, the better it'll taste. And as you go on throughout the season, you get more sugar sand in your sap, which that's just a natural occurrence. And that'll also affect the color. And then the trees budding, as the warmer temperatures come up and the trees warm up, your sap will get a little, I won't want to say cloudy, but it kind of cloudy, I guess. Mm-hmm. And as the trees bud, it just affects the flavor. It produces more sugar sand, warmer temperatures, more bacteria.
So there's a point where you need to stop.
Yes, as soon as the trees bud out. So the trees have 2 cycles of budding. I can't remember the first name, but then there's those buds and then there's leaf buds. And once your trees, the first bloom, once they bloom out and they start their leaf buds, you're done.
Okay. I don't know where I heard this, or I don't know if it's true, that at that point the syrup actually goes more bitter.
It does. So the sap will turn a cloudy sour, like it'll smell sour, and it'll give it a bitter, nasty taste to it.
Is there any use for that?
No.
So once it's done, you just shut the taps off?
Yep, just pull the taps out and you're done.
And just let the tree go back to being the tree, and
yep.
Go back next year and do it again. How long does it take you? Because if you had a good year, no hip surgery, that type of thing, how many trees are you doing again?
Next year, I'm going to be up around 7,000 taps.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my goal for next year, is to be right around 7,000 on tubing, and then I'm going to try to do another 2,000 on bags.
Okay. So and when you say on tubing on bags, meaning the tubing is run out into more of a bigger collector?
So a lot of mine, I run high tensile through the woods, and I strap my main line up to it, and then I run 5/16 off of that. And on the 5/16, there's 3 to 5 individual taps. And at the base where everything comes to, I have a diaphragm pump that sucks the sap right out of the trees, and it transfers it to a 1,550-gallon tank.
Okay, so now you're not just taking one bag at a time.
No.
But I'm sure, as you said, you're going to maybe look up to having 2,000 of them that are bagged, because you can't just bag everything. I mean, you can't just tap it. I mean, you've probably...
You can't do tubing on everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the neighbor right across from the house, he doesn't like the idea of tubing, but he's got so many maple trees, and they produce such high sugar content that I would be crazy not to go in there when I can.
Okay, so and you just make lease agreements with the different people that you're working with, and and now you've been running it full time since 2016, and this is something that probably when COVID hit, you still were out doing it. I mean, you don't want to waste the stuff in the trees.
Yep.
So weather kind of affects you. If we have a really dry summer, how did this year, because we really didn't have a winter in 2023, 24, how did that affect your output to this point?
This is by far the worst season that I've ever had. I haven't had a really good run yet. I think the best run I've had was just under a gallon of sap per tap, and 2 springs ago, the biggest run I had was 28,500 gallons of sap in a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. This place is probably a lot warmer. And the reason when I reached out on our Discover Montcalm podcast Facebook page, I asked the question, because I didn't know, is there anybody around here doing maple syrup? And your name popped up, and then you made a call to me. But I'm thinking, oh, we're just starting. And he goes, no, we're at the end of our season here. And, because my hope was I could come out here and we could actually see the operation, but it's still happening. Oh, you're still doing things. It's just that we happen to, in the last 2 nights, you're like, temperature's not where it needs to be. The trees aren't giving you what you need so that we could have this all fired up. But walk us through the process. Obviously, it starts at the tap.
Yep.
You have to have a good stand of trees. You have to have, I guess just good maples to start with. From there, you said it's brought down. It's either bagged or it's put into a big container, brought back here, and I take it that's what the stainless steel container. You dump everything in there, and it feeds it into here.
Yep.
Okay, because you got sap coming in, and you got syrup going out.
Yep.
In this, what did you call this?
This is an evaporator.
I should say what you called it. What it isn't called. So the evaporator, there's different parts of it, correct?
Yes.
Walk us through the phases of, once this sap comes in, what are the different phases before it goes out as syrup?
So first what we do is we dump it into the first blue tank up on the hill, and that's my raw sap storage tank. And then what I do is I fire up my reverse osmosis, and that gets cycled through once up to anywhere from 8 to 10%, and then that goes inside my concentrate tank. And then after I run all my sap through, or that tank gets full, I switch it back over and I crank my RO down and I bump that up between 14 and 16% sugar. And then that feeds into my feed tank that's right here behind the sugar house, which feeds the evaporator.
And how long does it take? I mean, I would think that once you have syrup, you're probably running some pretty long hours.
So before I got the RO, I was. The first year that I had my reverse osmosis, it was probably the best season we've ever had. I mean, every day just thousands upon thousands of gallons of sap, and that was the year that I got the 28,500. And I think we had a couple other days that were right up around 25,000 gallons. And that RO takes out of 70 to 80% of the water.
Okay.
And then I actually just tested my boiler the other night when I boiled for the first time, and right around 280 gallons an hour is what my evaporator will boil off an hour.
Okay.
And when I get my sugar content up there, I can draw off between 35 and 50 gallons of syrup an hour.
And go as long as you've got
Yep.
product coming in, you're
Yep.
pushing product coming out.
Yep.
It's a process. And, even though the season is this, your distribution is a lot longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
So, and as you said, you distribute, through your website, different stores. Can you go to your website to find out what stores you're in? I haven't looked here.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure on our Facebook page, which they can order off of our Facebook page as well. If they just look us up, Backwood Sugar Shack, they can send us a message with whatever they want. And on there, I think all of our shows are on there as well, about all the venues throughout the state that we'll be in.
Looks like you're everywhere from Jackson County to Traverse City, Tawas.
Oh, yeah. We go everywhere.
Lowell, local, but at the same time, you're here doing distribution out, making deliveries.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess you do what you got to do to keep things going, and then you're doing the bees, when the bees are doing their thing.
Yeah.
So is it something that every year you take your bees hibernate here, or do you normally try to take them south?
So the ones that are big enough go to California for the almond tree pollination, and then the ones that aren't big enough for the really small hives stay in Georgia to build. And we go down there the end of November to take them down, and unless they're big enough, they'll stay here to ship out in December to California. And then I go back down there in December to ship bees out, and then we go back down there in the spring, which actually I think I'm headed out next Thursday.
And then that's to go get them and bring them back.
Yep, well, we go down there and we'll make splits off of them, so that means just taking bees from one hive with some brood and adding a queen to a new box, and boom, you got a new hive.
And then boom, and as you said, not only are you getting land up here that you're doing maple, but you're also doing the honey as well.
Yes.
That's quite an interesting, process. I've just got a couple more questions because I find it fascinating to learn things that I don't know. I just grab the maple syrup, put it on my pancakes or my French toast, and away I go. But knowing that there is a process and there is some things that go through, it's kind of interesting how you've made it a business, and right now it's your full-time business. But growing up in Montcalm County, here in the Six Lakes area, in your opinion, what is it about Montcalm County that you like best, and why?
I would probably have to say the people. I really like I have people come out all the time when I'm boiling sap. Especially on the weekends, I'll have 10 different families here with their kids. Mm-hmm. And it's awesome because I get to, I'll put one of my workers in charge of watching my evaporator, and I get to take the kids out and I get to show them, I'm like, this is how far we tap, and they get to taste the sap coming out of the spile.
Which is different taste than what it comes out of here.
Yeah, it's sweet, but it doesn't taste nearly as good.
Right.
And then I get to run people to the woods, and I show them how I do everything, and I really like that aspect, just working with local people and just the neighbors that come say hi and help me out. I'll have, Rob and Amy Anderson are two very close neighbors every spring. They always come over here and help me. Oh. They'll help me tap trees or go get sap.
Takes a while to tap them, but
yeah,
a lot of times, keeps you fit.
Oh, it does.
a lot of walking. I'm sure you got a gator or something that might help pull some things along, but it's interesting. So the people are what you think, or what's your opinion of why it's so nice? It's country.
Yes, it is.
What are some of your favorite things to do other than work here in the county?
I really like to fish and hunt. And I do 99% of my hunting and fishing right inside of Montcalm County.
Just keeping it local. And plus, you've got acreage here, so, if the deer are here,
yeah.
I don't know if you've got a pond on the property or not.
Yeah, right over the hill.
So, but it's always nice to go out and check the rivers and the streams and the other lakes to kind of, I guess, if you like to fish, go fish. If you like to hunt. We've talked a lot today about the process and learning a little bit more about you. And again, I'm here with Cody from Backwood Sugar Shack outside of Six Lakes. And anything about your business that we haven't talked about that you'd like to leave us with?
No, not that I can think of.
I think, I feel that you've done I didn't know you till you called me, and then we met here, and it was nice that the dogs got put away because you got hounds, and otherwise you'd be hearing things happening in the background that the hounds would be just a barking. So BackwoodsSugarShack.com.
Yep.
Also on social media as well.
Facebook.
On Facebook, so you can go and like his page, learn more about it. You said when you're doing this that you have families come in. Is this something that you offer tours? I mean, you just don't have people stopping in, or do you? I mean, how?
Usually when I'm boiling, I'll make a Facebook post that I'm boiling and be like, hey, if anybody wants to come down today, I'll be down here for 12 hours. And usually within an hour after that, I'll have the local people come, just from word of mouth. Oh, went by the Rockefellers and we saw steam coming out of the stack. And
well, it's intriguing. It's something that we all, pick it up and there, put it on our pancakes or our French toast or whatever we're doing. In your mind, what makes your maple syrup good?
I think mine's the best because of how adamant I am of repetition, of doing the same thing over and over again. The number one thing being making sure everything is top tier clean. There's a big difference. A lot of guys, well, not a lot of guys, some guys won't clean their pans or their tanks throughout the season. They'll just run it and say good enough. And you can definitely tell the difference. My syrup usually stays light throughout the whole season, right up until the bitter end, and then I get a little bit of dark. Whereas some guys start out with dark syrup because they don't keep everything clean.
Well, that's quality control and consistency. As you said, sometimes you got to adjust that sugar, the amount of sap that you're making to make the amount of gallons that you really need. So what is your projection here in 2024 for how many gallons of syrup that are you projected to have when you're all done here?
Well, we're not 100% sure, but I'm hoping to be right around the 400-gallon mark before the end of it. We have a couple more good runs coming up. Cross our fingers that the trees hold off on budding out. But the hard maples right here in our area look like they'll hold off for at least another week. And I think we've got a couple more, 2 or 3 decent runs that might occur.
Okay. So, Mother Nature controls almost everything that we do, especially anything that is touched with that agriculture, industry, which you're part of. I want to thank you for bringing me out here and sharing your story. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as discovermontcalmpodcast.com. And if you have a story, whether you're doing a sugar shack or you're a cottage business that you're making crafts, or you're a full-blown manufacturing company, or you own a farm and you want to talk about the agriculture industry, give me a call, 231-250-9624, or hit me up at Duane, D-U-A-N-E, at dwvideo.com. So, Cody, thank you so much for your time today, and remember to buy and shop locally.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Duane at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.